I'm Lyndall Shields. I'm Roland Shields' son, and I'm here with Alton and Allene, their Uncle Alvin's kids, and we decided to get together. Alton's got about the best memory of all of us, of the stuff that happened, the stories that his daddy told him. We wanted to get it down on record and all, and so we're just going to sit around and talk a little bit. He's going to reminisce about some of the stories he's heard over the years. A lot of them, most of them he's told me. If he forgets anything, well, I'll be jumping in there and say, hey, tell him about this, tell him about that. And Allene's going to contribute some. We're just going to do the best we can.
I'm Alton Shields. I'm 66 years old, and I'm a typical older person, as in I can remember things that happened or I heard 40 years ago a lot better than what I heard last week. So we're going to start, and I want to start kind of in a chronological order of some of the things I know about my dad. Dad was the fourth son of Jesse and Myrtle, and he, through the years, I probably heard the most stories of anyone because we spent more time together, checking cows, building fence, going to town, coming home from town, etc. And that's what I'm going to try to tell. And I would suppose that Daddy's recollections are subject to his ability to recall, but he told a lot of stories through the years, and that's what I'm going to try to. And I want to start off with his childhood. And when I was grown, one day we were in the pasture, and he made mention about being cold. And I asked him, I said, he was talking about something about his childhood. I said, what are you talking about? And I don't even know who knows this, but Daddy apparently had some sort of a childhood ailment, one of the fevers. I don't know which one, scarlet fever, rheumatic fever, something. He missed a whole year of school, somewhere around 3rd or 4th grade. I don't know. Did you know that?
No.
Because of his sickness. He said it lasted over 2 months, and he'd already missed a lot of school, so he didn't go to school that year. So that put him behind, and apparently it affected how he felt later on down the road. And so I want to talk a little bit about where they lived and some of the moves they made in their early years, his early years. Grandpa and Grandma's place was about 12 miles out of Jacksboro on a county road, and they went to a school in their early years in a little place called Dameron. Now, Dameron was a community that some don't know this because we don't talk about it a whole lot, but apparently our great-grandmother was a Dameron, and her dad was named Moses, and apparently this little community was from there, coming to Texas at the same time that our great-grandparents came to Texas, or came to Jacksboro. They were from Texas, but they came to Jacksboro. And then somewhere in those years, Grandpa and Grandma moved the family to Antelope. And some of this information I have gotten from Aunt Inez. They lived at Antelope for 5 years. And I asked her, I said, why did y'all move to Antelope? She said, because of the size of the family. Said the house at Antelope was a lot bigger. Said the house we lived in there on North Creek was real small. And, you know, there was 9 kids after they were all born. So they moved. And it was a farm at Antelope because that's what Grandpa did or tried to do all these years, was be a farmer. And so they lived up there, and while they were there, that was when my dad, apparently because of his age, he excelled in athletics, and I know at least one other of his brothers, Uncle Curtis, was, from what I understand, a great baseball player. And Curtis played catcher, and Daddy said he had a great arm, and he could throw the ball from behind the plate to second base and put it right on the bag every time without even standing up. He could throw from crouching down behind the plate. And of course, Daddy excelled in basketball, track and field, baseball, And a story that he told me that I'd like to repeat here was that Antelope was a small school, always has been. I played, when I went to school at Peaster, we played Antelope in high school, and shortly after that they closed the school down there. But Daddy said Jacksboro always had good teams, and so Jacksboro and Antelope was going to play basketball. And he said the coach at Jacksboro wasn't too worried about coming out to Antelope and beating them. They were a small school, didn't have much. And he had one really good player on his basketball team at Jacksboro, and he brought him. And then he brought mostly his B team and second stringers, and they came to Antelope to play Antelope. And Daddy told the boys at Antelope, he said, I will guard this good player if y'all will take care of the rest. Well, long story short, Antelope won, and the good player only scored 2 points. Now, the good player was, some of you remember Aunt Edna, which was Fred Shield's wife that taught school in Jacksboro for many years. Well, this player was her brother. His last name was Myers, and he went on to go to TCU, and from what I understand was an All-American there at football and basketball. And so, anyhow, Antelope beat Jacksboro. And Aunt Inez told me that these two players, my dad and the Myers feller, their great competition was in track and field. And she said many times Daddy would win a race and then the other boy would win a race. And so they were competitors all those years. And so anyhow, they lived there 5 years. And when they came back to North Creek, I guess all the kids went to school in Jacksboro. And Daddy told me that, I don't know, he was in 9th or 10th grade, and he said the first football game he ever was at or to see, he played in. He was a player on the football team, the very first game he'd ever been to in his life. And but shortly after that, and apparently the times had already gotten bad, and Grandpa was having problems paying a note at the bank, Daddy quit school to go to work, and apparently Curtis did too. And at that time, they were building the highway from Jacksboro to the county line that went to Wichita Falls. And they both went to work on the road crew out there. My dad's job was busting rock. And they had the highway laid out in 30-foot sections and 30 foot long, and then however wide the highway was going to be, I would assume it was either 18 or 20 foot. So you had 30 foot by 20 foot, and they would dump big rocks, 18 inches in diameter or so in there, and then Daddy's job was take a sledgehammer and bust those rocks up no bigger than a fist. So Daddy said he was paid by the section. It was $1.25 a section, and he said if you was good and you worked hard all day long, you could get one section a day, and that would be $1.25. And Uncle Curtis's job was working on the concrete crew. Now, they didn't have mixer trucks back then, but they had mules that would walk in a circle and turn the mixer. And they would mix the cement, the sand, the water, and then they would take wheelbarrows and go pour that into the sections of busted rock. So that's how they built the highway. Now, one of the stories, apparently the Depression was already on. He said there were men that would drive all the way from Dallas, be there early in the morning before sunrise, waiting in line along the side of the road for one of the men to quit or to fall out because of their physical inability to handle the job. And these men would stay there until after lunchtime waiting to see if somebody would fall out so they could get a job. And he said that went on day after day after day. That's a cow in the back lot, y'all. So I don't know how long that Dad and Uncle Curtis worked on that highway. I don't have no clue. But the story that has always intrigued us was how Grandpa lost his place. They had 550 acres. He owed a small amount of money at the bank. I've heard different ones say different amounts, but it probably was around $200. And he was not able to make the payment. and the banker called him in and told him that the bank examiners were upset. And the way that he said, we'll get around this is we'll do a quick claim to me, the banker, and when they're gone, we'll put the land and the note back in your name. So Grandpa went for it, and so the banker had the land, and Grandpa didn't have anything. And I would make a note, the Jack County Historical Society has written a book on the history of Jack County, and in that book, I read it with my own eyes, that banker in 1937 had title to 87,000 acres in Jack County. Wonder how he got that land. But 550 acres of that was our Grandpa's land, and they lost it. And it was very hard on the family, especially my dad. Dad would have been in probably his early 30s when they lost it. And Grandpa and Grandma moved into Jacksboro. And I remember hearing that Daddy had gone off to work somewhere. I think he was working for Aunt Leona, her husband. They were farming somewhere off a ways. And Grandma wanted Daddy to come home. She had been upset with losing their land, and so Daddy came home. And shortly after that, they moved to Joplin, which is between Springtown and Jacksboro on the highway. And Daddy got a job. They were working on the highway on the other side of Jacksboro, which the first job was out by Uncle Jasper's store in that direction. This was on this side. They were working on the highway, and Dad got a job working as a night watchman on the road there. And I don't know how long this lasted, but I know it was in the wintertime, and he worked at night. They had a lot of equipment, and he told me that he said he would take his dogs with him to work, and said about midnight or 1 o'clock, if things were real quiet, he would sneak off and go hunting. And during that period of time, if they could kill a raccoon or whatever, they would save the fur or fox, and Daddy would sell that. And so they lived there for a while. I remember Uncle Roland and Uncle Elsie actually went to school in Perry during that time. And then they moved down south of Perry on what's called Reed Road and lived there for a while. And then I don't know how long they lived there or how long the boys would have went to school then in Whit. And then they eventually moved to where the place is now, and that was in 1938. And they moved there where I actually live now in 1938, and that's on Advance Road, northwest Parker County. And they also, at that time, Grandpa leased a place right up the road called the McCall Place. The older Mr. McCall was a lawyer in Weatherford, and they had 316 acres, and they leased that land in 1938 for the grass. And in later years, the older Mr. McCall passed away, and then his son was an eye doctor in Mineral Wells. And Dad kept that place leased until 1965. And I know we ran cattle on it. There were some other places that we actually owned that adjoined the McCall place. And so as a young boy, many times I would ride the horse, usually old Jake, and ride up the road to check the cattle on those places. And of course Daddy always told me how to count, make sure they were all there and everything was all right, then I would come home. I know I was young enough that Mother would have to help me saddle the horse, and I would have to climb up on the old anvil down in the shed to get on the horse. So that's some memories of my childhood, checking the cattle, and but that place out there, and on the McCall place, there was a house. And through the years, different ones of family lived there. I know Uncle Jarrett and Aunt Winona moved in that part of the country and they lived in that house for a while. And then later on, one of my mother's brothers from Oklahoma came down, and they lived in that house for a while. And believe me, it wasn't much of a house. We would actually tear that house down later, and there wasn't much to it. It was just had 1x12s on the walls for the outside walls, and a strip of wood up the seams. And it's hard to believe that people actually live there. So anyhow, I'm going to stop for a minute and let Lyndall talk and come up with some questions about some of this stuff that we're supposed to remember. I will. World War II was something that.
Tell about Uncle Curtis and Alvin buying the property.
Okay, the place there on Advance Road where I live now, the original place, was 256 acres. When they moved there, they rented it. They leased it, and that was in 1938. They leased that land. It was farmland. A good bit of it was farmland, and a lot more of it was farmland then that could be used now. But they had every flat spot, and some that weren't so flat, they plowed and farmed. And when Daddy, sometime during that point in time, Daddy went to a class or school in Fort Worth for aircraft mechanics. And I remember him telling that he would come in at night, and his snack for going to bed at night was a can of canned tomatoes and some crackers. That was his, and he thought it was great. That was good for him. He liked that. And even later in life, I remember many times that we would eat a can of tomatoes out of the can and eat crackers. And so they leased that land. Well, after Daddy went to California, probably in the early 40s, 41, 42, right in that, when the war started, apparently whoever they were leasing this land from, and I don't even know, but it came up for sale, and Daddy and Curtis bought the place. And I had a conversation with Daddy about this one time, and he said it would be easier for me to go out right now and buy this place or any other place for $10,000 an acre. And I said, he said it was so hard mentally because of what they had gone through about losing the place in Jack County. And I pinned him down on the price, and it was somewhere around $15 an acre that they paid for it. And then later on, during the war, before the war was over, Daddy bought Curtis's half out. And when the war was over, Mother and Daddy decided to come back to Texas, and Grandpa and Grandma was still living out there. And something that we should make a note here, Roland and Elsie both came of age during that time. Uncle Roland apparently joined the Army, and Uncle Elsie graduated from Peaster in 1942, and he was going to be a farmer, like his daddy, like his brothers, going to be a farmer. So he had a peanut allotment for the place, and he planted every field in peanuts. And he's going to get his deferment from the being drafted, the war zone, and he's going to be a peanut farmer. So when it come time to harvest the peanuts, and back then they just would plow them up with a lister, turn them over on their side. They would dry for a few days, and then they'd come in, and whatever they did, I don't know how it worked, but they would get the peanuts from the vines. And I don't know if there was any machinery involved at all, or if it was all by hand. But something bad happened after they had already plowed up the peanuts. It rained. So they waited a day or two, and they turned the peanuts over so they would dry, and it rained again. And so then they turned the peanuts again, and then it rained again. Uncle Elsie walked off and left the peanuts laying in the field, went to Weatherford and joined the Army. And he's never been back. He said, I'll never go back. And he never did, except to visit. So that was the end of his farming days. And but Daddy and Mother, Daddy wanted to come back. He wanted to farm. And Grandpa and Grandma were still living. on the place, but shortly after they came back, they moved to Weatherford.
Do I remember a story about them having a fair amount of car trouble on the way back?
They had some car trouble around El Paso, and Daddy said he was passing a car, and he accelerated to pass, and when he let off of the gas, he heard a noise, and he knew that something had broke in the engine, and he pulled into a gas station. There was also a mechanic shop, and the man listened to it, and he told him what he thought was wrong with it, and he said, the war's just over. He said, if we have to order a part, it'll be weeks before we can get it. But he said, I have a brother that's got a wrecking yard with wrecked cars. He said, we will, if you'll put it in the shop here, we'll take it apart, see what we need, and if we go out there, we'll try to find it. So Daddy, being a mechanic himself, worked on airplanes all those last 3 or 4 years, he helped the man take the car apart. They went out to the mechanics brothers. They found what they needed. They come back, said they worked all day Saturday and all day Sunday, put the car back together, and Mother and Daddy came back home the rest of the way from El Paso with the car working just fine. So that was the hand of God that helped them with that situation. And I don't think we'd be out of line to say here that Mother wasn't real enthused about coming back and being a farmer's wife. She hated leaving California because they had been happy there. They got married in 1943. I think we ought to back up and talk a little bit about how they met. All of the family that went to San Diego ended up going to the same church. And that church was known far and wide because so many people from around the entire nation that if they ended up in San Diego during World War II, many of them went to this church. It was a large Assembly of God church. It was called Sixth and Fir, which is where it was located. Later on, 30 years later, it became First Assembly of God. They moved out in the suburbs, built a huge church, etc. and so on. But Mother met Aunt Inez in this church. And then when Aunt Inez planned her wedding, she wanted Mother to be in it. And so they made arrangements. Now, San Diego had what they call the plaza or something. But anyhow, a lot of the streets came in like this from different parts of town. And so Aunt Inez made arrangements for Daddy to meet my mother at this plaza and ride the bus together back to the church for the wedding. And so Mother and Daddy met, and as I say, the rest is history. 6 months later, they got married. So, and there's a lot. I think somebody should write a book about all the romances that happened in San Diego during that time, because it was a number of our family met their spouses and got married in that area during World War II or shortly thereafter. And Curtis and Ada met. I don't know if they was there.
Aunt Inez and Uncle Edwin.
Aunt Inez, Uncle Edwin. So there was a lot of wartime romance that went on in Southern California in our family.
Yeah.
So
What happened to Grandpa and Grandma during this time when all the boys were gone off to fight? And I don't really know, but I do know that Uncle Jerry and Aunt Winona at some point in time moved there close. And I don't know what year they might have moved there, because I know that Dwayne and Troy and them went to school at Peaster during that time, but I don't know what years they were actually there. And now, Lyndall asked something, and I really don't know this much about this, but Daddy probably at some point felt the weight of not being in the Army or going off to the war, but he actually, because of his job at the Consolidated Aircraft, whatever it was there where they worked, they told him that he was needed more there than to go off into the Army. So he stayed and kept his job. And they're on the farm.
Oh, stop.
Go ahead.
Also, they said, I was told this story, you fill in, everything was it allotted or just rationed? The rubber for the tires, the gasoline?
They had all kinds of little ration cards for everything, for
And for
groceries, gasoline, everything, and they'd have little books of those. And I have actually seen some of those. Daddy brought back a really nice toolbox, and in that toolbox there was some of this stuff. I've even seen letters where Daddy would get raises all the way up to 55 cents an hour.
But I was gonna say,
Yes.
on the rations and stuff, this part I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure Mother told me this story was, they didn't really have money. Their dates, and I have pictures upstairs of them, they would do a lot of picnics and stuff. There's a picture, I have a picture of Daddy laying on the ground, and they're, I think this was before they married, but she said that they would get in his car and drive to the top of one of those hills, and they'd kill the motor because he didn't have money for gas. And she said they would sit up there and look at the city, because apparently it was, I guess San Diego sits in a hole or something, I don't know. And she said it was so beautiful, and so they made do with what they had to make do with.
Well,
So,
that's, I've heard them talk about all the kids after church would all load up and they'd go to Balboa Park. I've got a lot of pictures of them
Yeah.
at Balboa Park, and it's neat to see them out there picnicking with their long sleeve white
Well,
shirts,
with
still
dress?
wearing their tie.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah,
they-
well, that's what
they-
Daddy was
yeah,
wearing,
that's
yeah,
it.
a pair of black slacks and a white shirt. Now, he
Yeah.
didn't have a phone, but,
And
And I
you just don't
actually had
think
this
about picnicking out there in your suit pants and white shirts, but
Right.
they did.
but.
But that was a cheap day.
The something about the farm. Of course, Daddy early on, he always killed beeves and hogs. You know, through the years, we would have beeves and hogs that he would process there at home. And matter of fact, the old house where Grandpa and Grandma always lived, Daddy built the first house that we lived in, but I've often heard him and Mother talk about it. When they built that house, it wasn't going to be a place for us to live. It was going to be a garage, and that back room, which eventually became the kitchen, was where he was going to cut up his beef and pigs. He was going to use his table in there and cut them up before they put them in the freezer or cured them or whatever they did. And then we ended up moving into it. The house, the original farmhouse there, I think it partially burned and then they had to tear it down. I don't remember that story. It was never told to me. I would say this, that where that old house was, there was a low spot there for years that caught water. And Daddy eventually used it for, he had his wood pile out there where he cut wood. And then some point in time, they filled it in with dirt. And a few years ago, after I was living in the house, I noticed that weeds and grass always got taller in that spot where the old house had been. So I got the idea I would plant a garden there. So I did. The very first year I planted a garden there. And I planted squash in the spring. It did real well. And along about squash vines, when it gets hot, they wilt and die and go away. But somewhere in July, we got a pretty good rain. And the squash vines came back and started producing again, and I had squash until the very day of frost. And so that something about that ground, and I don't know what they did before they built the house there, but I think they hauled in dirt.
Well, that's what I was wondering if that was where they were slaughtering some of the animals. You know, nothing's gonna fertilize the ground.
Yeah, well, no, Daddy used the big pecan tree down by the barn, and an oak tree too, to string them up. And and of course in later years we would take the calves to the processing plant that Lyndall knows about.
Yeah,
What's it called?
old plantation.
Old Plantation, over in Springtown, right next to Uncle Roland.
Yeah, we live next door to
Right
it.
next door to it, and that's where we would take our calves and different things to have them processed. Now, Mother and Daddy always had a garden, always had vegetables, and we lived on those vegetables. A couple of stories. Somewhere along the line, they planted some apricot seed, and we had an apricot orchard. When I was a kid, we had 17 apricot trees. And of course, apricots are a lot like peaches or pears in that part of the country. The weather's got to be just right, or you're not going to have a crop. If a late frost will kill it many times. Sometimes dry weather will do it, but several times during those years, those apricots hit and hit good. And Mother became known. People would drive from many miles to come see if we had apricots. And I remember Mother sold them for $8 a bushel, which is pretty cheap now, considering you have to pay almost $100 for a bushel of peaches in this part of the country. So I remember one tree, I actually picked 8 bushel off of one tree. So Mother used that money. Who knows what Mother used that money for? It probably still hid somewhere. I don't know. But we had apricots several years, good apricots. And I would like to tell a story on Allene right now.
Before you do that, tell them about the Mustang grapes. How did
Aunt Corrine, Aunt Winona would always come to our house looking for grapes.
Uncle Roland would bring his kids to.
We picked grapes. They cook the grapes to make the juice, to can the juice, and then when the winter was cold, you make jelly. And Allene knows all about this.
Grape drink.
Well, sometimes, but you had to be careful. You had to be careful because it was well, anyhow, it was good for you, I guess. I don't know.
It would ferment on you.
Make a little wine on them.
Yeah.
Good Pentecost. Tell
Daddy,
the story on that.
we nearly always had green beans. Mother sometimes canned 100 plus quarts of green beans a year.
Nearly always.
And we would have corn, and later in years we would put corn in the freezer. But I would tell this, that the very first, we'll kill this right quick, and the very first electric stove Mother had, she had what she called a deep well. And this pan, she had a pan that would fit into this, and the burner would go down, so the pan would go down in this burner, and it'd just be about this much of it sticking up. And that's what Mother cooked her corn on the cob in. So one day for lunch, and this wasn't nothing special, we were just having lunch. And Mother had cooked corn. I don't know how many pans of corn she cooked, but she cooked corn on the cob. And so we all ate our corn on the cob and everything, and so Allene ate another one. And then Allene ate another one. And then in a minute she asked if there was any more. And so by now me and Carl was just sitting there watching. We're not eating, we're watching. And before it was done, Allene ate 6 ears of corn. So I don't know if she was extra hungry that day, or the corn was really good. I don't know. But she ate 6 ears of corn that day. And
I passed that one with corn on to Rachel. We just
Rachel
won't
likes
eat it.
corn.
Yeah.
Oh,
We just
really?
won't eat it.
Can you remember a little bit about cooking on the wood stove? What it's like for your mama to cook on the wood
Little
stove?
to none.
That always fascinated me. You know, she's the only person I've ever
I
seen.
can remember. I'll tell you what I know. We, in the old house, we had the wood cook stove in the kitchen, and we had a big Ashley wood heater in the living room. So when we cut firewood, we had to have 2 sizes of wood. One was for the big stove, and one was for the cook stove. And you could piece about this long and not very big around. And of course, Mother, she kept the wood box right next between the stove and the cabinet, that she kept the wood in. And she'd have to, of course, get the stove really hot to cook cornbread or biscuits or whatever. And after Carl and I started sleeping up in, we call it the upstairs, it was really just the attic. But when I come down the stairs, I would know she'd been cooking. And many times she'd cook on that wood stove. And of course in the wintertime, it was for heat too.
Yeah.
We wanted that wood stove going so it would heat up the house. We didn't have any other heat other than those 2 stoves. That was it. And I would know there were two men that lived up the road and off in the pasture named Plumley. And they killed hogs too, but they didn't kill them like we killed them. They waited till they was about 5 years old, weighed about 1,000 pounds where they killed them. And the meat was not good. And I told Mother, I said, would you not cook that sausage or whatever it was? And it was so bad that I wouldn't eat pork until I was well into my 30s because of her cooking from what them guys gave to Mother. It just wasn't good at all, and it stunk.
Well, now, what you mentioned about using it for heating up in the winter to help out the heating stove in there in the living room. Conversely, in the summertime, when it's 100 degrees, that stove had to be fired up. You cooked breakfast for everybody.
Well, yes, but I guess we had another stove. We had a coal oil stove, a kerosene stove, on the opposite corner that Mother cooked in, and it wouldn't be, well, when I was 5 years old, we came to Weatherford and went to Carter Ivy Hardware, and Mother and Daddy ordered an electric range. Then we went to Fort Worth to see Uncle Curtis and Aunt Vera, and when we came home, we brought Francis back with us to stay a few days. And so the next day, all day long, I kept telling Francis, her daddy being a commercial electrician, I kept telling Francis, we're going to get an electric stove. And she wouldn't believe me. She said, no. She said, you're not. And they had already taken the kerosene, the coal oil stove outside and put it in the yard. And later on, me and Allene used that to play mud pies on. Yeah. Even got in trouble with using the real lady for a time or two. Yes. And, but about 5 o'clock that afternoon, I heard a pickup, and coming off the hill to the south of us, there was some bad rocks and stuff, and the pickup made a lot of noise. And I told Francis, I said, here comes our stove. About 5 o'clock in the afternoon. She said, you're not getting a stove. And so sure enough, it drove up, and it was the men from Carter Ivy Hardware was delivering our electric stove. So from that point on, I was only 5, Allene would have been 3. We had an electric range that Mother cooked on in the summertime. And so we didn't have to use the wood stove in the summer. And that
you
helped.
still use the wood stove in the winter time.
Oh yeah, for several.
Well, see, I knew, I'm younger than you are, and I could remember cooking on that stove.
Yeah, we
I'd
still
always
used it.
assumed you didn't.
And I will tell you, even after we started school, the wood stove, you got the flat top here, and you got the burners over here, and up above it was 2 little places where she kept some of her dishes. It's called a warming oven. I don't know it, but I remember when we come in from school, that was the first place me and Carl would go and open that, see if there's any leftover biscuits. Biscuits, and get if there was a piece of Mother liked to cook what we call salt Joe, and we take that biscuit and open it up and put that piece in there. I guess salt Joe was cheaper than bacon because I don't remember her cooking that much bacon.
Oh, I still, up until I had started dieting, I still every once in a while buy me some salt pork. I love salt pork.
Yeah.
And,
that would be our afternoon snack.
2 things about the Ashley in the living room. Okay, 3 things actually. One thing, we didn't have television. First television we had was, I guess, when Uncle Curtis let us borrow theirs.
Right, that was in 1962.
I remember we'd watch him squat on it, and Mother and Daddy make us come downstairs and have devotion before we went to bed. But that was one thing. We didn't, so she read to us incessantly, and she just read and read and read to us. And I will always attribute my love for reading to my mother, although I don't think it rubbed off on Carl and Doyle, but I love to read, and I've tried really hard to impart that to both of my kids, and both of my kids are avid readers. That's one story, but the other story about the ash, I can remember us sitting close to that stove, like in the cold winter, because that's where you'd get warm or whatever. But 2 things, and I've heard Francis and Roland both talk about this. When they come to our house, Mother would have bricks on the back of that Ashley, and when it got nighttime, the bedroom I stayed in was as cold as a tomb, and Mother would take those bricks and she'd wrap them up in newspaper, and then she'd wrap them up in some kind of cloth, and she'd put those in the bed so you could put your feet to them to stay warm. And Francis and Roland both have said, do you remember that? And I said, well, of course I did. That's the only way we live.
Well,
But-
I can remember, and I'd sleep upstairs in the
Right.
attic with y'all.
Right.
And I can remember running up there with that hot
And-
brick,
and
'cause
see-
the only heat there was up there was that stove pipe
The pipe,
coming,
yes.
passing
Daddy
through
would
the
get up
attic
at 4 or
and
5 in the morning, build a fire in that heater, and for a long time my bed was in there by that stovepipe, and so I'd get the benefit of that. And Carl was in the other south room, and there wasn't nothing in there. It was cold. And later we put both beds in there, but Daddy would build a fire early in the morning, and I've seen that stovepipe get red hot.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen it also, he built a big roaring fire, and I've seen it dance. The legs on that stove would just
They
dance.
did that hot.
Shark pop.
And it had, what people don't understand, it had a little breather thing, it had a thermostat.
Yeah.
And that stove, when it got so hot, would actually go off. And when the room would cool off, it would open back up and the fire would start back up. And that fascinated me. Carl, at one point in time, still had that stove, and I'm sure it's been sold for scrap metal by now, you know, but.
You got one
Well,
busting
the-
come out.
The stove story. Daddy always had goats. Most of my growing up years, I remember we had goats, and then we had that part of the property was fenced off, and Daddy always called that the goat pasture. Anyway, I'll always remember, and I don't know if this happened many times or if it was just one, that he brought in a baby that was just born, and it was blizzard as cold outside, and he wrapped that thing up and put it in a box in the corner behind that stove, and somewhere in the middle of the night, we heard it start.
Yeah.
And it was like it came to life. And Daddy always said, I can remember this, he'd say, the worst, coldest night is when these nannies
Mamas
will
have 'em.
Have 'em. He
I
said
got
that
up in the morning, be 3 or 4 back there.
I never knew there was that many, but I remember so vividly waking up to the sound of them making their little sounds, and
Yeah.
it would be real quiet. at
See,
first.
I don't know if something happened to the mama, or if he kept them in there just to get them warm and took them back. I don't
We
remember
don't-
that part of the story.
we'll listen.
It probably just kept them in there since they was newborn. So
Well, I think they would have roasted it. I mean, it was that.
Well,
cold.
you gotta get them dried off, get them healthy, and when they start standing up, you know, on their own for a long time, I think he'd take them back to their mother. And, so,
Well, I'm gonna put my 2 cents worth in there. You talking about Francis coming out there. All of us cousins used to love coming out to y'all's house. And the fact you had it on TV, like I say, there was nothing to do. There was one sport, and that was kick the can.
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Whenever it would start to get dusk, and for those of you that don't know it, the art of kick the can, you have a 5-gallon bucket sitting out there in the yard with a small, like a coffee can sitting on top of it. Everybody has a big stick, and it's just like tag you're it. Somebody's it, they're guarding the can. He closes his eyes, everybody goes and hides. At the end, he opens it up, and if he can see you, call you out. You're behind that peach tree, Lyndall's behind the peach tree over there. I've got to come in, I've captured. I've got to sit there until somebody rescues me. Allene catches Alton down at the end of the house looking around trying to find something, runs in, and as hard as she can, she'll hit that can and knock it off across the yard. That allows me and her to take off running as hard as we can. Alton's got to chase the can down, get it, take it back, put it on the 5-gallon bucket, and if he catches you before you hide, you're back in. Now, we played that for hours.
We would play it
hours
on
until
the
it
north
was
end of the
dark
house.
as
Daddy had a big
can.
floodlight, and we would turn that light on and put the can out there we could see it. Then we would go off and hide in the dark. And through the
Snakes.
years,
We-
we never, nobody ever got snake bit. And there were snakes around there, but we would go and hide in the dark in some of the craziest places. And I credit my mother with that for her prayers.
Her prayers, yes.
And
One of my favorite stories about it, at the time, Gold probably wasn't 3 or 4 or 5 years old. But with playing, we took off, and you didn't know where all the good hiding places. There's a well house, something, a small building. I run over and I was gonna hide inside. I run over and jerk the door off. and Doyle was already hiding there, and he had that stick in front. As soon as I opened that door, he reached out and whacked me right between the eyes.
I didn't know
I
that.
shut the door. I thought, well, that place is already took. He never changed his expression, never frowned, never smiled, anything. Just whacked me, and that meant go find your own hiding place. So I did. But I can remember playing kick the can. That was a great sport. You didn't need a TV.
I don't know, those of you who remember, the horse we had during those years was called Jake. He was kind of a white horse with blue skin if he got wet, but, I think old Jake was born in about 1938 or 39, I don't know, and that was Elsie's horse. And, that's the horse Elsie rode until he left and went off to the Army. And he stayed there on the farm, and he became the pet. And we've got pictures with 4 or 5 of the cousins on him at one time. And he never didn't have a mean streak in him. He was just a gentle old horse. The story I'd like to tell is we had 2 milk cows. Might have had 3 at one time, but one was called Old Red, and then her mother was a milk cow, and I don't remember her name, but Daddy was working somewhere, and he told Mother, said the older milk cow, she was kind of contrary. Now, the way we did this, we would keep the calves at the house. So the cow would come in at the end of the day, and we would milk her and then turn the calf in to nurse. Then we would separate them and keep them both up all night. Then we'd milk the cow again in the morning and then let the calf finish up. So anyhow, this older milk cow, she was in the habit of not coming to the house. And so Daddy told Mother, said, help Alton. He can saddle old Jake, go to the pasture and bring her in. So I said, okay. So I go to the pasture and find the milk cow, and we're coming back to the house. Well, there's a fence that runs east and west that come down to the corner of the cow lot, and then there was a fence that went straight south. And so we're coming along this fence, and we're almost to the gate. And I'm on old Jake. Everything had been cool. We just kind of plodding along. And about the time we got to the gate, me knowing the personality of the milk cow, and I thought, that stupid cow, as soon as she gets to that gate, instead of going in, she's going to take off and start running down that fence. And I'm smart enough to know, and when she does, old Jake's going after her. He was a cow horse. He didn't like getting beat by a cow. And I thought, and when he gets in front of her, he's going to turn, and I'm going to go off. Now, the saddle that we used was, the stirrups were set for Daddy. I'm just sitting up there with my feet dangling. And so, sure enough, when she gets to the gate, she takes off running, just as fast as she can go. And old Jake turns and takes off after her. And I'm hanging on the best I could, but when he gets in front of her, he turns, and I go off. And I'm right under him, and he stops immediately. And Mother had been at the house or in the lot watching all this, and she just knew I was dead. And she comes running. The milk cow turns around and goes straight back to the lot and goes in. And I'm laying there on the ground, and Mother comes running out. Of course, it knocked the breath out of me. And she wanted to know if I was all right. When I could breathe again, I said, yeah. But old Jake stopped. He never moved until I got up. And I was right under him on the ground. And he was a good horse. He was a smart horse. And I've seen some of our older cousins, my brother, they really abused him. They put too many people on him. They would take him out in the water and use him for a diving board, all kinds of stuff. But that was one of the things.
How old do you think he was whenever he died?
He was 26.
We've had cousins swear up and down that old Jake was just like Lassie on TV. There was actually 3 or 4 Lassies over the years. You know, if one would die, one would go on.
No,
but
there was another horse later on called Old Joe. Daddy bought him.
Yeah,
But there wasn't but one old Jake.
there wasn't but one old
Yeah.
Jake.
Yeah.
I
What
think
you say,
there was very
30?
many cousins that rolled up with it.
It's the gas well about the
Allene, I got out of high school in '69. Allene graduated in '71. She went to Weatherford College for a couple of years, like I did, and then you were working J.C. Penney's at the time, and I guess it was tempting to make a career out of it. So she didn't go back to college right away. So a couple of years went by, and so she had decided she was going to go to Texas Tech and get her 4-year degree. And so during that time, in 1973, Daddy leased the place to Upham Oil out of Mineral Wells, and back then you got a lot of lease money.
You're talking about leasing the mineral rights?
Right. You know, and through in the last few years, I mean, all this boom that went on, people were leasing their land for several $100s an acre. Well, Daddy leased our place for $1 an acre, and that was for 2 years, not 1 year, 2 years. So basically, Upham Oil had 2 years to start some kind of a drilling process, or they had to release the land. So the very week that Allene left to go to Lubbock, Mother went with her. Upham Oil, they started bringing in their equipment. They had like 2 days left on the lease, and so they're going to drill a well. And so Daddy and I drove out a couple of days to get Mother and bring her home, and so Upham had set up their rig to drill a well, and Allene's off in college, and I brought Mother and Daddy back home. And back then, it took several weeks to drill a well. And Daddy, he's kind of keeping up with the proceedings and everything. And I think along about the first week of October, they quit drilling. Daddy visited with the people, and they said, "Oh yeah, it's going to be a good well, etc., so on and so forth." And then they just kind of shut everything down and went off and left. And Daddy couldn't find out nothing about what was going on, and he was upset. And Mother said they had gone to town, and when they come back, he had gone over where the well was, and there was some old man over there was loading some stuff up on a flatbed trailer, a big truck. And he said, "Oh yeah," so they had some kind of problem with this well. They're not going to do nothing with it, blah, blah, blah. When Daddy come back to the house, Mother said he was just about crying. He was upset. And Mother said she told him, she said, "Alvin, don't worry about it." She said, "If God wants us to have a well, we'll have a well. If not, it's fine. Just don't worry about it." And of course, that's from years of living by faith. And I would say this, that all the years that Daddy had cattle, we, you know, there wasn't a lot of money in those cattle. And we nearly every year spent more money feeding the cows than we did and got money from selling them. And but in 1969, one of our neighbors, Jimmy Travis, had worked in the artificial insemination, the breeding cattle, and he called Daddy up. He said they've come out with these what we call exotic breeds. They're from Europe, Simmental, Limousine. There were several breeds of cattle. He said, "If you'll get rid of your bulls, let me breed the cattle artificially." And he said, "Give me the opportunity to buy all of the heifer calves back. And that way we can, you know, I will have a start in the business." And so Daddy was one of the first in Parker County that started doing this. And so I would say that in the early 70s, Daddy, it was a good deal for him. And I know we had
financial situation improved a little bit.
Yes, well, we didn't have enough. There wasn't enough volume to really make a difference, but there was some. I remember one in particular. We had a 3/4 Simmental heifer that Daddy had kept, and then when she had her calf, it would have made it 7/8. And he sold that heifer and her calf to the superintendent at the Millsap schools for $5,000. So he got a little extra for the cows, and it had kind of leveled off, and it wasn't as lucrative as it had been. And so Daddy had high hopes for the gas well, you know, and rocked along. Allene's off in college. She's not there to bolster her mother up, but mother does pretty good on her own, especially if she's correcting daddy, you know. And of course, I'm working. I'm married, living in Weatherford. You know, I have my own set of issues and problems in my life, you know. So I go out when I can to help and to, you know, and of course, Doyle is at that teenage years, wanting his own truck and all this kind of stuff going on. And so, anyhow, the well is just sitting over on the hill. Now, the Upper Oil and Gas, they have all this land leased around there, and they're still drilling other places. And so from October to December, I think they drilled 5 or 6 wells within 3 or 4 miles of Mother Days. And they hooked them up, put them all online. Everything's cool. And
So all these people is getting money off
yeah, they're
the
starting. Well, their wells are producing everything. And so Daddy, he don't know what's going on. I mean, you know, nobody's ever talked to him about it or said anything. So along about in December, so we've gone October, November, December. They come back in with their equipment and stuff and start messing with it. But we don't know what they're doing, you know. Everything's a big secret, you know. So finally, right at the end of December, they told Daddy, they said, we're going to hook it up. And so there was a pipeline, they put a pipeline in from the well that went south, the neighbor's place, and then it crossed the road and went north. There was a pump station up the road about 1.5 miles. And so they hooked it up, and so it's on, but that's all we know. And so 2 or 3 weeks, a month went by, I don't know how long, but they came to Daddy and they said, look, we got a problem. It's not working. He said, we're going to have to put a pipeline from your well, get in with these other wells, and said, your well's got too much pressure, it won't let none of the other wells in. So they hooked that up. So I don't know how long it takes. And Daddy, I didn't mention this, Daddy went to work over at Fort Walters in about 1960, well, after the house was built. We didn't say much about building the house either, but we might want to talk about that. But Daddy's and Mother drew the plans for the house. Daddy, we started it July the 1st, 1964. And they had a lot of problems. They had that because they borrowed the money. Their permanent financing was going to be at the Federal Land Bank, and they had to get interim financing through the regular bank, and we had to have a builder to do all that. Well, they had a problem with the builder. The guy quit and all that kind of stuff. So Daddy ended up being the builder, and I don't know how he got around that loophole about having to have a builder. But anyhow, our first night in that new house was the first Friday of March, 1965. Which would have been Carl's senior year in high school. I would have been in 8th grade. And I will say this, you know, a lot of people have a housewarming. We didn't have a housewarming. We had a house dedication. And that Friday night, there was, I think at one time we counted about 65 people in and around the house. There was a lot of kids there, Carl's age, upstairs, different places, but I think there was like 5 or 6 preachers there. There was a lot of singing, praying, and a very small amount of preaching, and then a lot of food. So anyhow, we dedicated the house to the Lord, and that was our very first night that we stayed in the house. And so shortly after that, Daddy got a job for Southern Airways, that were the civilian contractor that ran Fort Walters in Mineral Wells. Of course, this is right at when things started getting hot in Vietnam. So Daddy worked there until about 74. And so when I was started about 15 years old, I started helping Mother and Daddy do their income tax every year. And I had to do research and everything, found out. But anyhow, back to the gas well. They've had these problems. They got it hooked up. We still ain't heard nothing. We don't know what's going on. And Daddy is waiting to pay the taxes on the place. He's already behind. He's already late. And he finally went over to Mr. Upton he said, oh, Mr. Oak said, oh, we'll send you some money. Don't worry about it, Mr. Shields. Everything's going to be good. So the last year that Daddy worked at Southern Airways, his income was around $9,000. And, you know, it's hard for me to believe that Mother bought groceries for all of us on not more money. That's $200 a week. And, but anyhow, we're waiting, or Daddy's waiting. I don't even know what's going on. And finally, in the spring, sometime, March, April, I don't know exactly when, there was an envelope in the mail from Alton. And do we tell them?
It's so insignificant now, sure.
Yeah. He got more on that first check than he had got the whole last year he worked at Southern Airways. And it was, the first 2 years was good. And the part that I liked, he made some trips. Some of his brothers paid him back money he owed for years.
Well, I'd heard tell that shortly before his death that he had appointed, first time his whole adult life, he was debt free, didn't owe anybody
It was
anything,
before that.
anywhere.
We,
That was, he was so
checks.
proud of that, because I know farming is the worst way to make a living there is. You
Well-
always are in debt. You always owe somebody at the feed store.
well, most
at the bank.
farmers, even the big farmers,
Yeah.
they depend on the bank to finance them every year,
Right.
and then they pay them back, you know, well.
In one bad year, will set you back 6 or 7 years
Exactly.
before you can get
And,
caught back up.
When Carl came home from Vietnam, he bought an old pickup, 64, it wasn't old then, but 64 Chevrolet pickup with a 4-speed in the floor, and he eventually just kind of, I don't know if Daddy paid him for it or what, but it became Daddy's truck. And then it became Mom and Daddy's car. They drove it to church in town with no heater for a long time. And so, anyhow, we kept that pickup for years and years and years. And in 1979, that winter, we had no winter up until the week after Christmas. Then we had an ice storm, and then the weather stayed bad for the first 3 weeks of January. And on Sunday night after church, Daddy got me, and he said, "I'm going to Fort Worth tomorrow." The pickup had died. The ice storm or something had died. It wouldn't start. Hey, we pulled it up down the road. It wouldn't start. No matter what we did, it wouldn't start. Daddy said, "I'm going to Fort Worth, look for a pickup. You want to go?" I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." So the next day, we went to Fort Worth, to Dubshaw Ford on South Freeway. It's been advertised years, the biggest Ford dealership in the world,
Yeah.
all this stuff. So we went in over there, and they had about 25 or 30 customers and about 50 or 60 salesmen. And every salesman you talked to didn't know anything. They knew how to sell you a plain Jane car, and that's it. And Daddy had a pretty good idea of what he wanted in a pickup, but there was none around on the lot. And finally some supervisor come out and told Daddy, said, "If you'll go down East Berry Street here about 5 or 6 blocks, there's a big lot on the left, and it's got 300 or 400 vehicles in there." He said, "You walk around out there. If you find a pickup that you think will suit your need, get the number off the windshield and come back singing." And so we went looking, and this was on Monday, and so sure enough, we found something, and it was a F-350, and it was really considered a 3/4 ton, but it had an extended bed and a wheelbase, and it had a big motor, you know, whatever they had at them back then, 400 cubic inch engine. Daddy said, "I think this is what we need. It looks heavy duty." It was heavy duty. And so we took the number, we went back, and we gave the number to that man. We had to wait for him to get through with whoever he was helping. And he looked it up on his, they did have computers back then, but it only had a certain amount of information in them. He said, man, I didn't even know we had this truck. And the list price was $9,000, just under $10,000. And I could buy a truck for $10,000 now.
Oh, I love that.
Anyhow, he put all the numbers in and everything. He said, man, I didn't know this truck. So he done some figuring. Of course, they advertised, they'd say you anything they had for like $100 over, you know. And finally he come up with a price of $7,200, which I thought that's good, you know. And I'm sitting there waiting because I knew what was fixing to happen. And he looked at Daddy and he said, now are you needing to finance it or are you going to use your bank or what? Daddy says, I'll just write a check.
All that had to do him good.
So we paid for the pickup and they said, now come back Wednesday and get it for their busy place, you know. So I went with him again. Of course, we had to take an extra vehicle, and so we went and picked it up and took it over on the north side of Fort Worth over there on one of those roads that goes out north because there was something called Safe Pull. They were going to put a bumper and a hitch and all that stuff on it, you know. And Daddy and I went down the street to a little old hamburger joint and got a steak sandwich or something. And I remember sitting there across from Daddy, and he pulled out a $50 bill and handed it to me. And I remember I had a tenth of a second flash in my head of Daddy. And I don't know, there was something about it that I knew that Daddy wasn't going to be around long. And he gave me that $50 bill. He said, I appreciate your help. We come back to Weatherford, went to my house in Weatherford and called Mother. We didn't have cell phones back then. And Mother said, they're coming tomorrow to put carpet in. And Mother and Daddy had bought carpet in November. This is the end of January. So sure enough, they came, they took them 2 days, they took all the furniture out and everything, put carpet and linoleum and all, the whole house. That was on Thursday and Friday. On Saturday night, Daddy and Carl is on the phone, and Daddy's telling Carl how proud he is of everything. The truck, carpet, you know, made the house look a lot better, didn't it?
Yeah.
And Sunday morning, that was Saturday night, Sunday morning, Daddy had some calves he was feeding down at the barn, and it'd been wet. Since the end of December, it'd been wet, muddy. And Daddy walked to the barn, had his walking cane and everything, was going to turn the calves out. And he didn't come back. And Mother finally got Doyle up, and Doyle went to the barn to check on Daddy, and Daddy was dead.
I know that always, I've heard that story a lot of times, and I know it always meant a lot to me to know your daddy was one of the hardest working men I've ever known in my life. But being a farmer, he could never get ahead. You know,
Yeah.
he was always having to hustle, just barely making it. And it meant so much to me before he passed away for him to actually make it to a point where, like I say, man had a brand new truck, fixed the house up. He was living on Easy Street there for just a while. Man, he made it. And that was, you know, for him to finally get his reward for all that hard work.
He wouldn't give up his calves and his cows, though.
Oh, well, no.
Yeah.
It'd be like me selling my toolbox. I don't care if I win $10 million lottery, I'm still gonna have that old toolbox right in the garage.
Yeah, right.
You look like you,
There's a story that Mother told me, and I'm not even sure it's gonna totally jive with yours, but she said there was a point in time that I believe it was Chester Upland told him, said, I don't think that we're gonna have a well here. And she said, you said when Daddy come to the house, I thought she said that he cried. His daddy cried
she
real
did.
easy.
yeah.
And he said, I thought this was my way out. And she tried to encourage you. And she said, where my mother went to pray, was in her room, and she had a piano bench that was sitting underneath the window, and she would pray looking out the window. And she said, I went in there and I knelt down. And I told the Lord, I said, if you will honor us with this. And she said, I named the ministers and the preachers. She said, this is who we'll support. And she said that was when, almost immediately, there was a turn. Now, I've heard stories that Chester Upham literally came in a helicopter. I don't know if that was true or not, but I'm telling you, there was a total change in what they had said, because they had not been positive about it whatsoever. So it went from no positive to just off the chart. It was one of the strongest wells in this part, maybe even in Parker County at one point in time.
It was the third best gas well in Parker County when it came in. And the history of gas in Parker County is this. The average gas well at Parker County lasts 3 years. Well, this well was drilled in the fall of 1975, and it produced well for a number of years, and I would like to say it's still producing, but I don't know. I get a fourth of it, and I got a fourth of the royalties that belong to the well. At one time belonged to the Shields family. Not all of them still belong to the Shields family, but anyhow, I got a $28 check about in July. So it still produces.
But
a little.
it's still producing.
Yeah, it's still producing.
It may not nothing, may just buy you supper.
I would say
but
this.
It's still producing now.
I would say this. Mother died in '95, and we went through several years there where it was almost more than $28, but not a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And it just went along, you got it to buy a tank of gas or whatever, some groceries or whatever. And along in about, 2003, 4, somewhere in there, they had drilled a well right up the road, a horizontal that they had fracked. And I remember a businessman here in Westford called me up and he said, have you got you a well yet? And I said, no, not yet, but I got the old one. He said, man, they're sucking that gas right out from under you. And I said, no. I said, they're going to push it up through there. And so one Saturday night, I've had a post office box since 1973 in Weatherford at the post office. Carl called me up. He said, have you been to get your mail? I said, no. And he said, you better go tonight. I said, I ain't going tonight. I said, why, is there a check in there? He said, yeah. And so, sure enough, that other well had, when they fracked it, it had increased the production. Yeah. And I went and got the check and everything, but I will say for about 2 years it was, the production was hugely more than it had been, And the thing right now in the oil and gas industry, that they passed some laws 3 or 4 years ago, and they can literally steal half of your money now. They have all kinds of expenses. I was just looking at that last check and of what it produced and how much they paid me and how much they kept for themselves. They have all kinds of things on there where they take money from you.
Yeah,
and
they're
so
stealing money out of that, like people cross drilling.
What else we want to cover before we shut this down?
I want you to tell me if it was my imagination or if I remember an old story about your mama's ability to high kick.
Yeah, she
Okay,
could stand
tell us about. I've heard my sister.
She had extremely long legs, short body but long legs. Her height came from her legs. And you remember her and Carl would stand side by side, and she would flat-footed kick. And I don't think Carl would say she could kick the door facing. I don't think she could do that, but she could forevermore kick up there.
Well, Frances and Rolene believe she could.
Well, maybe she
could. They were teenagers whenever they got
out. Do you want me to
out
also tell you this good Pentecostal woman could do the Charleston?
No, really? Oh, I'd give $100 to see that now.
But that only happened like twice in my whole life. Because that was like, you were gonna go to hell if you did that.
Oh,
So-
yeah, definitely.
And how in the
Definitely,
world she learned,
definitely.
because Rachel doesn't even know how,
Yeah.
so.
But
that's-
that always amazed Francis and
Oh,
Rosalie.
she could.
They said it would really take quite a bit of inducement to talk her into it.
Oh, yeah.
But she'd finally hike her skirt up just a little bit and jump up and kick the door face.
But you said Rolene was asking about the Pond's cold cream. Mother never wore Pond's cold cream. She wore Lady Esther cold cream every day that I have any remembrance of. And I actually Googled it the other day, and you could still buy it. You can still buy Lady
Well,
Esther cold cream.
What it was is it amazed those girls, your mama's complexion. She had a beautiful complexion.
That didn't come without a lot of hard work, because
What did she do?
she never let the sun touch her skin. That's how come her
And,
face. Because
she had
if
a
you-
bonnet.
If you saw her arms were sun scarred. She had the brown spots and all this, but her face was never, she would never let the sun really.
She
She
always
went
wore
outside
that
to hang
bonnet.
out the clothes or anything, she wore that bonnet.
You see the front of that bonnet come out.
She
front
would
of
make her own
Yeah,
bonnets.
yeah.
and down the
yeah.
sides.
Yeah, the old bonnets, you were looking down at
Right.
too. They protected you well.
Yeah. So is there anything
But-
else?
But she, like I say, that's what all
And
those
I
girls
really
can
almost,
remember.
it would be worth having a video because she could do that. She and Carl they'd get to fussing at each other because, he was 6'2" and she was 5'7", but she could kick off.
She kick up her heels. I don't know that I've got any more recollections. I think we covered. Do you have any memories much of Grandma and Grandpa Shields?
Our grandpa and grandma,
Yeah.
Jesse and Myrtle.
Yeah, Jesse and Myrtle. You and I have talked
I
about
have
this.
a picture
I've
somewhere.
seen snapshots.
I have a picture somewhere I'm real proud of, but I'm not sure I still own it.
Yeah.
But I might, but Grandpa, he came out a few times and stayed there too. Grandma came too. I remember one time Grandma came to watch me and Carl. Allene was a baby. Mother went to Oklahoma. To one of her brothers was sick. She went to Oklahoma. Her dad went to Oklahoma. And I remember Grandma was going to get a roast out to cook for all of us. And so I couldn't have been probably 4, 5, 6. I don't know how old I was.
I think you were probably 4 or 5. 'Cause you were
Anyhow,
always in Boston.
I informed Grandma. I said, "That's not the way my mama does it." And she responded, "Well, that's the way we're going to do it, son." Everybody was son for Grandma.
Yeah.
And I remember that. And then I also remember, I have a picture of Grandpa and I. Daddy apparently had some calves across the road where that double wide is now. Across the road over there, we were feeding. And when we were coming back to the house, we had just come through the gate. We're on the ditch on the east side of the road. And anyhow, Mother took a picture of me and Grandpa.
Yeah.
And he's got the feed bucket in his hand. I'm standing beside him, and I have an old yellow tomcat in my arms that's just about as long as I am. It's a huge old cat. And so I don't know what happened to that picture. I don't know if it's still in my possession or somebody else's.
I may have this picture upstairs because I made an album of it. But there is a picture of Grandpa pulling a wagon, and it has
for
a
clothes.
wash, and it was diapers for me.
Oh.
And he hung them out or something. And the story that I was told, because I was a baby, was that Grandma said he never hung out one diaper for me when we had kids. And he's doing this. Now, I believe that my mother actually told that story because, now, my mother, the story that I get about Grandma, she was very protective of my mother. She tried to help her out. She couldn't much because they lived apart, but apparently she thought quite a lot of my mother. So
Well,
I don't know.
there for a while, they were living in the old house while y'all were living in the
I don't know
One
if
that
that,
she
I'm
built
not
for
sure
the
about that.
lady.
I'm not sure about that, because they moved to Weatherford not too
Yeah.
long after Mother Day
But
came back.
all I know is that was diapers, and you can see them in the background, it's
Yeah.
just white cloth, and it was diapers. And I'm under the impression that it was mine, and Grandma said he never hung out. one
You remember
night.
the house Grandpa and Grandma lived in right behind y'all's house in Fort
Oh,
Worth?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, if you went up on the porch and went to the right, that was the front room, then the kitchen, and you had to go to the left. There was a little bathroom there, and it had a window that come out on the front porch, and then the back porch was right outside the bathroom. And I remember one time Allene locked herself in the bathroom, and she couldn't have been more than 3 years old, 4 years old. And it was I can't remember what all we did, but I remember Grandpa standing outside that window on the front porch trying to tell her how to unlock the door.
I don't remember that.
It was a,
Well, that's, like I say, that's the thing, I think with us, we were so young, we can just see what I remember, like I say, we lived in that house in front of us, Pop and I was working on the bathroom, and we had to take the door off the hinges, and it leaned it up there, and something happened, that door fell on me, and I raised such a ruckus, screaming and hollering and crying and all, that Grandpa Shields come over from behind to see what was going on. You know, that's all I got. I can remember that. I can remember Grandma coming out on the back porch sometime while I was playing in the yard, but I really don't remember much
See,
about
I
it.
don't think I remember them, I think I remember seeing pictures of them.
we're through.
Did you stop it? Just-
Oh. One more
It'll be
thing.
a second video, but it won't hurt anything.
Okay. Do want to mention this is September the 2nd, 2017.
Right.
My watch doesn't say what year it is, I had to stop and think, but just the time they stamped it. Okay.
It'll be time stamped on the video, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't be. All right, are you good? Is that it?
For mine, it is, yeah.
Boy, just to hear the batteries.
You should have plugged it in.